Hello everyone, welcome to Tactica Imperialis and a very happy Christmas to you all if you are celebrating it. If you're not, I know it's just another regular Monday, but at least you've got the day off more than likely. So if you are celebrating Christmas, I hope you had a really good one. Hope you got some nice hobby stuff if that's what you were looking for, or whatever else is going on with you. I hope you're having a good day in general. Today, well, it's Christmas Day. I know that, you know that, it's Christmas Day. It's a time for giving, a time for gifts, at least in many people's eyes. And whilst I'm not one for doing a super awesome Christmas special because I've only got limited resources and time and I've just had exams and diddly-diddly-dee, I want to talk about one of the best gifts that 40k has had in recent times. One of the best gifts. And that's Age of Sigmar. I know that's going to probably ruffle a few feathers, but Age of Sigmar, for the sake of 40k, was a gift. Allow me to explain. So, when Age of Sigmar came out in 2015, or whenever it was, I think it was 2015, it came out in a very rough state. Its game system was incredibly simplified to the point of being too simple. There were no points values, there was no balance for competitive play. There were a lot of things missing and it could be scummed to hell. There was no ones always fail, there was no limits on summoning back monsters with Savage Dominion. Screw Chaos players for doing that. But it was in a really rough state. It had its problems. It was a good game. It was a good game to play. But if you wanted to play it anything other than casually, it was flawed as hell. So, in 2016, we got the General's Handbook, the direly needed balance pass to the game that introduced new missions, 3 ways to play, points values, the 3 rules of 1, which is now the 5 rules of 1, and all of those things that made the game much, much better. I'm not saying it was perfect, it still needed work, and there were some things about the system that I didn't like, and I still don't. But the game improved massively, both for competitive and casual players, because there were more options, more missions, more fun. It was just a good time all around. And now in 2017, it's got another General's Handbook, which has introduced even more balancing, introduced even more missions and more options, and has just got better and better and better. And AOS is doing that, and it's iterating upon itself. And then we come to 40k, which came out a few months ago. 40k 8th edition, on the surface, was scaring a lot of people because a lot of people were saying, oh, I don't want them to Sigmarize 40k. That was a phrase I heard. That was a quote I saw written down in places. I don't want them to Sigmarize 40k. What those people meant, I assume, was tear out the lore and replace it with what they perceive to be garbage, and basically just ruin all the depth and challenge of the game. Because that's what they perceived Sigmar to be. And when Sigmar came out, it was kind of like that. The lore had all been taken away, we didn't really get much to replace it, and the game system was too simple. It's not like that anymore, and I'll get to that at the end of this video, but it is something worth pointing out. That people were worried about 40k getting the AOS treatment. And you know what? It did. It got the AOS treatment, and everybody loved it. Almost. Not everybody. Some people will still play 30k, which is using the old rules to get this new rulebook very soon, and some people will play 7th edition, and some people will just rage quit. That's just to be expected. But overall, 40k 8th edition went down a storm, and it's still going strong. Of course it is, it's 140,000. But it got the AOS treatment in order to do that, because what it got was a chance to learn from Age of Sigmar. And that's something that people maybe don't appreciate, is how much 40k has learned from and improved on these systems that AOS had at fault at the start, and that it's iterated on and improved with the General's Handbook. So let me give you a few examples. Flat wound rolls. One of my biggest gripes about the game was flat wound rolls because it made monsters like tissue paper, sometimes. I didn't like it, I absolutely hated it, and it's gone. Strength and toughness is still in the game. The way rend works, because rend is far more prevalent in 40k than it is in Age of Sigmar, but the armor saves are higher to compensate. This means that units have a level of durability, and it means that armor-piercing weapons are still useful without completely breaking the game. The damage system, whilst it looks completely the same at a glance, it's subtly different in the fact that wounds don't spill over. So a 3 damage attack to a unit of 1 wound models in Age of Sigmar kills 3 models, in 40k kills 1. That is a very huge difference that stops monsters just tearing entire units apart in a single round of combat. You also have the Chargers Fight First system, which is really, really impactful for combat armies that need to close distance, because you can't just launch a massive charge with 10 of your fragile units and expect 5 of them to do anything because the other 5 die. That's just not going to work for anybody, is it? So 40k introduced charging units fight first to allow armies like Dark Eldar or like Orcs or like Tyranids who need to hit hard really quickly because they're not strong enough to take a hit in return to deal their damage first. And that's something that I really think Age of Sigmar could do with improving on in future editions. And there's more. You can say perhaps that 40k looked at Age of Sigmar and said, okay, people don't like the simplicity of this system, but we can't have the complexity of 7th edition because that was convoluted and really impossible to keep up with unless you were right on top of everything and owned every book, and that was just a mess. So they could find a middle ground. They took the Age of Sigmar formula and then they just spiced it up a bit. And then they also pretty much nicked the General's Handbook and 3 Ways to Play because it went down so well in AOS and was so popular that they nicked it, brought back Chapter Approved and 3 Ways to Play, and would you look at how similar the General's Handbook and Chapter Approved are this year. They both include rules for factions that have yet to be updated or that need an update of some sort. They include rules for both open, narrative, and match play, including balanced points values, and all of those good things. New missions, new ideas, new inspirations, new customization, and all of that lovely stuff. They're so similar because Chapter Approved looked at General's Handbook and said, hey, you've got a good thing going on here. Do you mind if I do the same thing? And General's Handbook's like, yeah, you go for it, mate. And you get that sort of idea that the two are using each other and working off each other. And they both follow a very similar formula in that the General's Handbook comes out every year. Chapter Approved comes out, I think it's every 6 or 12 months. There's an article on Warhammer Community about it. It's just escaped my mind at this moment in time. They both follow a very similar formula where there's a big hard balance pass at regular intervals. It's the same idea. But I think the biggest lesson that 40k has taken from AOS is all about release schedule. Because AOS got this so wrong. It is my biggest bugbear now that the law's getting somewhere about AOS. It is the slow, crappy release schedule. It's terrible. It is absolutely terrible. Because how many armies have been updated for Age of Sigmar at this point? Stormcast, Bloodbound, Stormcast, Khorne, Tzeentch, Nurgle. 2 sets of Orcs, Ogres, Flesh Eater Courts, Pestilence. 2 sets of Dwarves, Seraphon, Sylvaneth. But what about the armies that we haven't got? Got 1, 2, 3 Elven factions, which are actually divided up into about 10 at this point. You've got the basic Dwarf faction, you've got all the human factions, haven't been touched at all. We haven't got Slanesh, we haven't got vampires, we haven't got necromancers, we haven't got anything to do with the vampires at all. If they're going to bring Tomb Kings back, how are they going to treat that? And destruction, well, what about goblins? What about the not mounted ogres, the Beastclaw Raiders? What about the foot ogres, the gut busters, or whatever they're called? There are a bunch of factions that still have nothing. Absolutely nothing. And it's been over 2 damn years. That is unacceptably slow. Particularly when you consider the lore reset that happened. Because AOS reset its lore from the fantasy universe and we were left with nothing. Absolutely nothing. So we didn't know where anybody was at. I don't know where the Elven factions are really at. I don't know where the Dwarven factions are at. I don't know where the human factions are at. I know that they're starting to get somewhere. We've got the great cities and this and that. But what about Tyrion? What about Malerion? Malekith is now fused with the dragon, so he's called Malerion. What about Grungni or Gork and Mork or Nagash? Where's Nagash at? I know we're getting this malign importance thing, which they're sort of foreshadowing on this own little separate website, Warhammer Community, right now, and that's lovely because that's a huge ambiance building, and it looks so much fun that they're going into, I think it's death. It's either going to be death or it's going to be Millennium. It looks like it's going to be death. So that's really exciting. But why are we waiting nearly 2.5 years for this stuff? This should have been done after no more than 18 months. We should have pretty much had a full roster. Particularly lore-wise. It was just unacceptable. What 40k did, though? Well, just look at its release schedule. We've had 10 codices. And it's not even been 6 months. 10. And yes, I could go on and say, well, we haven't got Orcs and Tau and Dark Eldar and Gene Stealer Cars and diddly-diddly-dee, but by the time 40k gets to its 1-year anniversary of release for 8th edition, and particularly when we get to that 18-month thing I just mentioned for Age of Sigmar, when we get to that point, I reckon we'll have a pretty much full roster. We might be missing like one codex here or there, but we're going to have a pretty damn full roster. Every race will be represented, and that is important, because 40k has learned its damn lesson. It's decided, okay, look, these armies have all had a huge reset on terms of their rules. Their rules have been completely reset. We've had to rush out a new set of rules for all of them. Right, okay, we need to balance them up, because the Space Marines are going to come out and they're going to have a bunch of stuff going for them, so here they're going to be better. And then we do the same with the Death Guard, and they're going to be better. We've got the Grey Knights, and the Mechanicus, and the Guard, and the Dark Angels, and I'm saying a lot of Imperial armies. I think there's been a lot of Imperial releases. You get where I'm going with this. Those armies are just statistically better because they've got more stuff and have been balance checked for the new edition. The other stuff is basically playing a sort of tied over rule set like we got in 3.5th edition. All the way back in like the 90s or 2000s, I don't know when 3.5th edition was. But they're getting them done quickly so as we get a chance to use those armies on the same level as everybody else, to a greater or lesser extent. Of course, balance is never going to be perfect. And the same applies with lore, because there are armies whose lore is just crying out for information, like the Fourth Sphere of Expansion, and the Ethereal Supreme, and the Fate of the Farsight Enclaves. And I know I'm talking about Tower and all of that, but you get where I'm going. Like, what's happened to Comoran now that Kane's Gate got broken during the fracture of BL Town? And what's going on with that? And, oh, they've just hinted about Luther escaping in the Dark Angels Codex. Spoiler alert if you didn't know that, it's a really interesting plot point. So what does that mean for Lion? And what about the Traitor Primarchs? And what about this whole bullshit about Crystal Sanguinius? Sorry, I don't swear very often, but you know what I mean. There's just so much possibility and options and ideas and theories, and they need to get that lore out to us as quickly as possible, which is why the Space Marine Conquest series is fantastic, and giving a lot of context, and the codices can help to flesh these things out, and Age of Sigmar didn't do that. 40k realised that Age of Sigmar didn't do that, and it hurt Age of Sigmar, so it's doing it for 40k because that's just important, damn it. Okay? Sorry, I didn't really mean to get carried away, but you get where I'm going with this. Whether you want to believe it or not, whether it's true or not, I think Age of Sigmar was 40k's practice run, testing ground for basic mechanics, for pushing the envelope with lore, and for other forms of testing. And part of me is curious, actually, and you can debate this in the comments, feel free. Do you think the fact that Age of Sigmar got such a massive pushback on the Stormcast and the lore of the reset of the universe at the end times, that Games Workshop dialed back what they were planning to do for Gathering Storm, and that's why it felt so rushed? It's probably not the case. But what if the fact that ending the universe and having this huge long kill list of people who died in the end times, and that basically nothing came out looking the same, and then we had this new universe and this new faction with the Stormcast Eternals, do you think the pushback on that was so severe that the writing team stepped back and thought, whoa, we can't do that again. We need to change what we're planning to do with regards to 8th edition's lore and the Gathering Storm and the Primaris Marines. Maybe that's why it felt so rushed. It's just a theory. It's just an idea that I had while I was coming up with this video, and be interested to see what you have to say about that in the comments. But whatever the case, both games are really good in their own way. They are really good games. I've enjoyed playing Age of Sigmar with my new Stormcast, and I will look forward to playing 40k over the Christmas period with my friends back in England. But so much now of 40k has echoes of what Age of Sigmar did first. Age of Sigmar pushed the envelope, tried things, iterated and improved them, which allowed 40k to iterate on it and improve even further. And hopefully we're now at this point where the two systems are able to look at each other and say, okay, this system's doing this and we're doing this and this is more popular, so how can we sort of work this to make that work for us? And then what else do we want to try so that we can test it here, and if it doesn't work, we won't apply it here where it might be more impactful, and so on and so forth. The two games can work in a mutual relationship where they both benefit from the other's existence and constant care and attention. I'm really positive about the future of Age of Sigmar and Warhammer 40,000 working together for each other's benefit. And I've said this before, both in videos and on Adeptus Podcastus, but I'll say it one more time. If you are someone who plays Warhammer 40k and refuses to play Age of Sigmar on the sole reason of mechanics, not lore, not models, rules and mechanics, if that is your objection and your sole objection, you owe it to yourself to give the game a go. You owe it to the game that allowed your game to be good, in some ways, to give it a go, to see what it's like on the other side and see where some of what 40k does came from. But of course, this is all just my opinion, and I know I'm probably wrong when I say that Age of Sigmar was 40k's testing ground, or at least I might be right, I might be wrong, it depends, I'll have to see. But I'd be very interested to see what you have to say in the comments below. Do you think 40k just iterated on Age of Sigmar, or do you think it was an independent thing that they just happened to be coincidentally the same? And if you think there was copying and iterating, to what extent? And do you think it was a good idea, or should 40k have tried to be completely unique and stand alone? There are so many questions that could be raised from this, and I really want to start a debate in the comments. So let me know what you think, maybe once you've opened up your Christmas presents and maybe you want to talk about getting into a new hobby since you've been looking at it over the holidays. I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I'd be very interested to see what you have to say about this, because it's probably going to annoy some people that I'm talking about Age of Sigmar in a positive light, because some people still hate it, and for those people, I don't know. But yeah, let me know what you think. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have had and continue to have a very happy Christmas and a very happy New Year. Thank you all for watching. This has been Tactica, Imperialis, and I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.